Now, when our kids can't find something in our house, it's typically lost in their bedrooms. And their bedrooms, we just shut the doors. That's one battle I gave up on a few years ago. I said, as long as I don't have to see it, just keep the door shut. We usually have to remind them if they've lost something. Okay, there are details here. Pay attention to the details. Be methodical. Take your time. Pick things up and look under them. That's what's going on here, inevitably. My kids find what they're looking for, or after exhaustive search of 5 minutes, they come down. I've looked everywhere. And I usually walk up, pick up one thing, and go, there it is. Right? And it's followed by this joyous relief on their part and a lot of eye rolling and a shaking of heads on mine and my wife Dina's part. Well, the same thing here, minus the eye rolling. Okay, there's this joy, this relief when she finds the coin. She tells her friends. The Greek word for friends here is feminine. She's calling her girlfriends together to celebrate. And so Mark Moore notes in his commentary that by sharing a story about a sheep and by sharing another one about a coin, he has put this lost and found in terms that both men and women can understand. In our desire to see the lost be found, we need to have that same attention to details in our search. What is it going to take? What do we need to do? And what do we need to do differently if what we are doing isn't getting it done? Where do we need to look? Where do we need to go? And we have to be willing to go all out. That means letting go of some traditions that you love. It means letting go of some of the safety and the comfort of what you've become accustomed to and just saying, God, I'm not about this piece of property. I'm not about this particular program. I'm not about this particular style of worship. I'm about doing whatever it takes to find the lost. It reminds me of what Bob Russell said. He used to be the lead minister at Southeast Christian in Louisville, saw it grow from a couple hundred to 20,000. Wrote a book, When God Builds a Church. He said, methods are many, principles are few. Methods are always changing. The principles never do. It's that idea that our message we don't compromise, but how we get it out there is always up for discussion and a willingness to try new things because there needs to be a sense of urgency and a willingness to do whatever it takes. That fervent, urgent search in this parable, that willingness to do whatever reminds me of one of my favorite stories that Max Lucado told in one of his earliest works, No Wonder They Call Him the Savior. He writes this about what happened in Brazil, where he used to be a missionary. He says, longing to leave her poor Brazilian neighborhood, Christina wanted to see the world. Discontent with the home having only a pallet on the floor, a wash basin, and a wood-burning stove, she dreamed of a better life in the city. One morning she slipped away, breaking her mother's heart, and knowing what life on the streets would be like for her young, attractive daughter, Maria hurriedly began to pack to go and find her. And so on her way to the bus station, she enters this drugstore to get one last thing. Pictures. She sat in the photograph booth, closed the curtain, and spent all she could on pictures of herself. And with her purse full of these small black and white photos, she boarded the next bus to Rio de Janeiro. Maria knew Christina had no way of earning money. She also knew that her daughter was too stubborn to give up, and when pride meets hunger, a human will do things that before were unthinkable. Knowing this, Maria began her search. Bars, hotels, nightclubs, any place with the reputation for streetwalkers or prostitutes. She went to them all. And at each place, she left her picture taped on a bathroom mirror, tacked to a hotel bulletin board, fastened to a corner phone booth, and on the back of each photo, she wrote a note. Well, it wasn't too long before both the money and the pictures ran out. Maria had to go home. The weary mother wept as the bus began its long journey back to her small village. It was a few weeks later that a young Christina descended the hotel stairs, her young face now tired, her brown eyes no longer dancing with youth, but speaking of pain and fear. Her laughter was broken. Her dream had become a nightmare. 1,000 times over, she had longed to trade these countless beds for her secure little pallet. Yet the little village was, in too many ways, too far away. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, her eyes noticed a familiar face. She looked again, and there on the lobby mirror was a small picture of her mother. And Christina's eyes burned and her throat tightened as she walked across the room and removed the small photo, and written on the back was this compelling invitation: whatever you have done, whatever you have become, it doesn't matter. Please come on. And she did. Do you hear the lengths that Maria went to in order to find her daughter? Every detail she could think of, every possible means, every last place to reach her was thoroughly executed. We aren't privy to the party in Lucato's story, but you can be sure there was rejoicing. And that story is so like the final parable that Jesus tells, this parable of the prodigal son. Charles Dickens says of this parable, it is the finest short story ever written. It's the most famous parable of the trilogy. It's the climax of the series. It's also the longest one that Jesus ever told. And there's two parts to it. The first is about the son who wanders, and the second is about the son who doesn't. The first son gets lost abroad. The second one gets lost at home. The second one is equally important because it brings us back to the very beginning of the chapter with the Pharisees and their grumbling. Because these are like the sons who did not wander. They're complaining about Jesus socializing with the lost sons. But first, the story opens with the younger son, prematurely demanding his inheritance early, which in essence, at this time, was like saying, "Drop dead, Dad." Incredibly rude. Incredibly rebellious. He's lucky he gets anything. He's eager for dependence. He's the younger son. He's traveling far off in search of what? What's he looking for? Greener grass? His own full-on party, day and night? A better way? How often are we in our teen years thinking, boy, I just know better than what my parents are doing? I experience that all the time now. I am the dumbest person in my house, apparently. It's okay. I remember when my dad was the dumbest, and a few years later he got real smart again. I'm looking forward to that day. I'm not there yet. So I love that statement. He says, teenagers, quick, get out of the house now. Go solve all the world's problems while you still have all the answers. I love that. My kids don't think that's funny. But whatever prompts him, he gets out there and the hard times hit. He squanders his resources. Now he's desperate, so he hires himself. Literally, it says he attaches himself to a local hog farmer who probably didn't need or want him. And if he's given the lowest job, and one particularly repulsive to a Jewish audience, it's now this job of feeding pigs. Now, if you're trying to paint this story for a Jewish audience, you cannot get into more deeper depravity than what you just have gotten here. A Jewish person feeding pigs. And just when it seems that things can't get any worse, they do. He gets so hungry, he's prepared to eat the pods that are fed to the pigs. They're edible, but only as a last resort. In fact, a diet of these pods is mentioned in other Jewish literature of the time. And it was always a meal of extreme poverty, dire circumstances. Only then would someone eat those things. Jump all the way down to verse 17. But then he came to himself and he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father. And I will say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants." And so he rose and came to his father. This whole sad situation just slaps this boy back into reality. He literally comes to his senses. The phrase there indicates a return to sanity. And he wisely chooses to go back home. He's clearly going to be better off as a slave to his father than a slave to this pig farmer who doesn't know him from Adam. And so as he approaches the farm, the father sees him. It says he runs to greet him. In the Middle East, running was an act of indignity. You didn't do it. But this father ignores the proper protocol. And in this excitement for his son, Jesus does not indicate here whether the father is standing and waiting and looking, or if he just happens to look up and sees him at the end of the drive. But what he does say is that the father takes the initiative for reconciliation. Look at it. Verse 20, he rose, he came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. kissing the sweaty, filthy neck of the man who's been taking care of the pigs. And the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe, put it on. Put a ring on his hand, shoes on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate, for this my son was dead, and he's alive again. He was lost, and he's found. And they began to celebrate. The son has been humbled. And he is only hoping to be a servant. It's like he has this whole speech memorized. He's going over in his head. I've been there. I've done stupid things in my life. And I remember having to go to my dad and try to explain it. And boy, you sit there and you try to phrase it just so you can get in. I'm dumb, you're smart. You're right, I'm wrong. Whatever, please don't hurt me. Please forgive me. Just go over it and over and over. But before he is even able to get half of it out of his mouth, his father starts barking out orders to the servants. And he lavishes on this foolish boy all the trappings of an honored son. The robe, the ring, the sandals. These are more than signs of comfort. They're signs of sonship and of freedom. The robe was such that was given to an honored guest. The ring was a sign of authority. And the sandals would have represented freedom since slaves went about barefoot. His father is restoring him to a place of honored son. In short, he is alive again. And I see that robe and that ring and those sandals, the fattened calf, the music and the dancing. And what I see here are elements of extravagance. The extravagance in this reception of the son reminds me of the party we threw for my oldest child, Andrea, when she was 16. I knew the birthday was coming up about 3 years ago. And I told my wife, we were still living out in the Washington, D.C. area. We've been there almost 10 years we served out there. And every year, Dina and I would drive up to New York City. We'd spend maybe just a couple days taking a show or two and just take in the city and then come back. We love New York. We thought after we left D.C., New York was where God was preparing us for. Turns out it was Joplin. Almost the same thing. Andrea loves drama. She was in the Shakespeare Company. She did all these dramas. One year we took all the kids with us and we took in a couple shows and she loved it. And I said, why don't we take her back up for her 16th birthday? We'll go and we'll take her to see Phantom of the Opera. At the time, it was her favorite musical. I said, we got our 4 kids, the 2 of us. Let's let her even invite a couple friends. Let's just spend a little money. Let's do a little bit of extravagance here. And I said, she also loves cooking and she loves the Food Network. Let's take her to that one Bobby Flay restaurant that we can afford, Bar Americana. Because we had lunch there, burgers and fries, pretty reasonable. So we all got up, got on the bus, got up there, enjoyed the Phantom of the Opera, went on over to Bobby Flay's, sat down at our table, looked at the menu, and remembered we were here at lunchtime. This is dinner. There was no burger on the menu. In fact, the cheapest dish was a $22 bowl of soup. My wife and I glanced at each other, kept our poker faces on. The kids looked at the menu and looked up at us, panicked, because they know normally it's 2 items or 3 off the dollar menu, Dad. There was no dollar menu here. So what do we do? And I just said, just get what you want. Get what you want. And as they went around, they each ordered, and my then 10-year-old son ordered a full rack of ribs. Bless his heart. Got around to me, I had a bowl of soup. I ordered 1 appetizer, but there were 8 of us, and this gentleman, our waiter, who was from another country, brought out 2 baskets of these, house chips or whatever with the dressing and the cheese, and I said, is that 1 order? He goes, well, no, it's 2, but there were so many of you. And then he looked at me in front of everybody, I could take 1 back if you'd like. And I'm like, well, no, you already got it here now. $11 for each basket of these chips. Ordered drinks, I got water with lemon. Several got water with lemon, a couple didn't. They got lemonade, Coke. Turns out not free refills, but the waiter was very diligent in keeping them filled. So $9 for 1 child to drink lemonade. $27 for 3 kids to have Coke. Yes, $500 later, we walked out of that place. But not before, while ordering dessert. Yes, it is a birthday party. He's giving us our dessert, and he says, do you know who Bill Gates is?